my dear students. How are you? I hope all are you good. Welcome back to another class. Today, let me start English chapter number 8, the result of disobedience. So, let me start. In a beautiful villa on the banks of the Medway resided a gentleman whose name was Darn. ठीक है, एक जो है एक डानले नाम का जो एक जेंटलमैन था, वो मैडवे रिसाइडेड के किनारे एक सुंदर विला में रहता था. So the loss of a beloved wife had given a pensive cast to his features and seriousness to his deportment. Mr. Darnley, however, was an affable, gentle, benevolent, and human gentleman. Mr. Darnley's fortune was sufficiently great to enable him to engage a governess as nurse Chapman, a worthy creature to whose care he put security, trust his daughters, Emily, Sophia, Amanda, and Eliza. So these are his daughters. It was Mr. Darnley's wish that the young folks should rise early and take a long walk every morning before breakfast, but they were strictly ordered never to go beyond their own grounds unless their father accompanied them. This order they had frequently endeavored to persuade Nurse Chapman to disregard. But faithful to the trust reposed in her, she always resisted their urgent entreaties. The morning after Mr. Darnley went to Rochester, the poor woman found herself truly indisposed and wholly incapable of rising in the accustomed hour. The children, however, were dressed for walking, and the nursemaid Susan charged not to go beyond the shrubbery, and they all went out in high good humor. Now, Susan said Sophia as soon as they entered the garden, "This is the only opportunity you may ever have of obliging us. Do let us walk to the village, and then you can see your father and mother." La Missy, replied the girl, "Why, you know, 'tis as much as my place is what this Nurse Chapman should find out." "Find out indeed," it said Amanda. "How do you think she is to find it out? Come, do let us go. There's a dear good creatures. Yes, dear Susan, do let us go," said Eliza, skipping on before them, "and I will show you the way, for I walked there last summer with father." It was a luckless hour then that Suzanne yielded, and the party soon reached the village. Suzanne's mother was delighted at seeing her and highly honored by the young lady's presence. "Oh, sweet dear creature," said the old woman, "I must get something for them to eat after their long walk, and my own's quite hot, and I can bake them a little cake in a quarter of an hour. Okay, and I will milk Jenny in 10 minutes. मैं prepare करती हूँ चीजें. So the temptation of her hot cake and new milk was not to be withstood, and Suzanne began taking down some smart china cups from the mantelpiece and carefully dusted them for the young lady's use. Eliza was suddenly attracted by the appearance of a tame lamb which went up lating to its mistress with a view of asking its accustomed breakfast. She was so delighted with the beauty of the little animal that she wanted to kiss it and attempt to restrain it for the purpose. Willis Billy, ungrateful for her intended kindness, gave a sudden spring and frisked away. Eliza followed in hopes of being able to catch him. But he ran bang along into the high road. A woman whose appearance was descriptive of poverty but whose smiling, countenance indicated good nature, at the moment happened to climb down from a wagon, and accosting Eliza in a tone of familiarly said, "That's not half such a pretty lamb, miss, as I have bought at home if you care to come. I will give it to you." "Oh, the pretty creature," replied Eliza, "how I should like to take it." "Well, come along with me, miss," said the woman, "for I'll only live just here." "We'll make haste, Dan," said Eliza. "Give me your hand, miss," replied the woman, "and let me lift you up, miss." And then she pushed her into the wagon, and it took off. Eliza realized she was being kidnapped when the wagon driver laughed cruelly and said, "Good catch, Peggy," she cried gratefully, and besought her to let her go, let you go. She replied, "What after all the plague you? I have had to kidnap you. My sister needs child laborers to make laces. Keep quiet, she will treat you well, and you will learn to make laces and help my sister." Sister and prophet. Eliza was scared now. "Oh my sisters, let me go to my sister's cry." उसका किडनैप हो चुका था, तो वैगन गाड़ी में बैठी थी वो, तो वो चिल्ला रही थी अपनी सिस्टर्स को बुला रही। "I will find plenty of sisters for you in a few days," said the wild creature, and they proceeded onward to London. Eliza's tears continued to flow. उसके आंसू लगातार बहते जा रहे थे, but she dared not utter a complaint as her inhuman companion protested. She would break every bone in her skin if she ventured to make the least noise. When they arrived in town, she was dragged to a miserable pool, down several steps, where they gave her some bread and butter to eat, and then desired her to go to bed in the end. She was left by her inhuman kidnapper to mourn his misfortunes and lament having disregarded her father's injunctions. The next morning, she was taken to a woman and sold to her. After the deal was done, she was pushed in where 9 or 10 children were sitting in a little room making lace. है ना, उसको वहां पे धक्का दे दिया गया, तो जहाँ पे एक रूम में ऑलरेडी 9 से 10 बच्चे बैठे हुए थे. She was dressed in a tidy brown stuff gown, a nice clean round eared cuff, and a little colored bib and apron, and she was ordered if any person asked her name to say it was Biddy Bullen, and that she was niece to the woman who employed her. Back home, Miss Eliza was vociferated through the village, not only by Suzanne and her mother, but by all the neighbors who had heard of the calamity. Whilst her sisters ran about frantic with grief, crying, "Eliza, my love, my darling, oh, if you are hid off, for pity's sake, speak." सब उसको ढूंढ रहे थे, है ना, गांव में शोर मचा मचा के चारों तरफ ढूंढ रहे थे उसको. At the same time, the poor woman had quitted her room and walked into the garden to see what had become of her living charges, and directly missing Eliza from the group, which was then fast approaching towards the house, she called out, "Where's my little darling, Miss Eliza?" "Oh, lost," said Sophia. "My sister's lost. Indeed, she's lost," exclaimed the poor old woman. "Lost what you do tell me? What do I hear? Oh, my master, my dear master, never shall I bear to see his face again." Suzanne then repeated every circumstances just as been related, and with sighs and tears. The men servants must instantly summon and sent on horseback different ways. When Mr. Darnley was apprised of the calumnious, when the agitation of his mind may be easily conceived, but can never be described, handbills were instantly circulated all over the country. The child's person described, and a reward of 500 guineas offered for her restoration. 9 tedious months passed away without any intelligence of the lost Eliza. Never shall I forgive myself," Sophia would often say, "for having deviated from my dear father's command." One intense hot afternoon in the month of August, as Eliza and the children were sitting hard at work with the door open for the sake of air, an elderly lady and gentleman walked up to it and begged to be accommodated with a seat, informing Mrs. Bullen their carriage had broke down a mile distant, and they had been obliged to walk in the heat of the sun. The appearance of so many children, all industriously employed, was a sight particularly pleasing to the liberal-minded Mrs. Montague, and she immediately began asking the woman several questions about them, but there was something of confusion in her manner of replying that called forth Mrs. Montague's surprise and astonishment. "They really are lovely children, my dear," said she, turning to Mr. Montague, who had stood at the door watching the approach of the carriage, which he perceived coming forward, and as to that little creature with the mole under her left eye, "I declare, I think it is a perfect beauty." Mr. Montague turned his head and regarded Eliza with a look that at once proved that his sentiments corresponded with those of his lady. "What is your name, Mala?" said he in a tone of kindness. The child colored like scarlet and looked immediately at her inhuman employer, who, catching the infection, replied, with evident marks of confusion, "Her name is Bidibulin, sir. She is my niece, but 'tis a poor timid little fool and is always in a fright when gentlefolks happen to speak to her. Go, biddies," she continued, "go up into my bedroom and mind that shade which you will found upon the tree, upon the reed. You should try to conquer that timidity," said Mr. Montague, "by making her answer every stranger who speaks to her, but by taking that office upon yourself. You absolutely encourage the shyness you complain of. Come, either, my little girl," continued he, observing she was retiring upstairs, "and tell the lady what your name is." Encouraged by the kindness of Mr. Montague's address, the agitated child obeyed the summons, although Mrs. Bullen attempted to force her into resistance. "Well," continued the old gentleman, patting her on the cheek, "and where did you get that petty mole?" "My mother gave it me, sir," replied the blushing child, "but I did not see her do it because Nurse Chapman told me she went to heaven as soon as I was born." "Okay, so your mother, and what was your mother's name?" said Mr. Montague. उनसे पूछा कि तुम्हारी मदर का नाम क्या है? "Darnley, sir," said the child, forgetting the lesson that had been taught to her. "Darnley," exclaimed Mrs. Montague, "the very child that has been for these 12 months past advertised in all the papers." Then, turning to convince herself of the fact, and the very mole confirms it, Mr. Montague immediately attempted to catch the woman, but she escaped his grasp, and darting out at the bamboo, she was out of sight in a few moments. "Is she really gone? Is she gone?" all the little voices at once demanded, and upon Mr. Montague's assuring them she was really gone forever, their joy broke out in the house in different ways. Some cried, some laughed, and others jumped and showed there never was a sense more completely calculated to address the feeling of a benevolent heart. Mr. Montague's carriage at this period arrived, and the footman was desired to fetch a magistrate from Wycombe Willis. The worthy clergyman resolved to remain there until his arrival and begin questioning all the children. All but Eliza were immediately put under his protection, but Mrs. Montague was so anxious she should be the earliest care that she begged her husband to order a post-chaise directly and set off immediately for town. The request was willingly complete with, and by 3 o'clock the next afternoon, the party arrived at Darnley Court. Nurse Chapman was standing at the window when the carriage stopped, and looking earnestly at the girl, suddenly exclaimed in a tone of rapture, my child, my lost Elise." Mr. Darnley, who was reading, sprang from his seat and flew to the door in an ecstasy of joy. In less than a minute, we returned folded with Eliza to his sobbing heart. The joy of her intelligence ran through the house, and the other children impatiently flew to the scene of transport. They hugged each other and cried but one thing from that moment. The children all unanimously agreed to was to strictly attend to their father's orders and never in the slightest instance act in opposition to his will. Mr. and Mrs. Montague were laden with cases and honestly entreated to remain Mr. Darnley's guests. The hospitable invitation would have been gladly accepted had not been to thoughts of the poor children who were still at Wycombe seen to claim his immediate attention, and so great was the philanthropy of Mr. Montague's character that he could never rest satisfied. His a single duty remained unfulfilled. Okay, so dear students, this chapter is in here. I hope you all are very well understandful chapter. So we will meet in the next class. Thank you everyone.